guys, welcome back to my show. In today's episode, we have a really special guest here with us today. So, hi Sonja, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
I'm great. It's my pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and talk about writing and books and just everything that I love.
Okay, so let's get into it. So, please introduce yourself and your first book which you've written. And maybe give us a gist of everything you've written so far.
Sure. Well, my name is Sonja Thomas, and I write stories for kids of all ages and all genres. I first sold a couple of short stories, a YA fantasy, middle grade fantasy, and my debut novel that just came out in March is Sir Fig Newton and the Science of Persistence. And it's about a 12-year-old scientist named Myra Williams who will stop at nothing to save her sick cat, Sir Fig Newton. I've also worked on a couple of middle grade historical fiction novels. They're not out yet. And I just had another middle grade science fiction short story called Love Bugs Bite come out. And yeah, I hope to be also writing some more middle grade novels.
That's amazing to know about you, since their middle grade authors I think are amazing. All authors are amazing in their own way, because they take every book you read. The main thing about a book, I guess, according to me as a reader and a writer, is that it has to be something you can connect with, number one. Number two, every time you read a book, it kind of you fall into a new world. You dive into a new world. So let's say in the real world you are not really having fun, you're feeling bored. The reason you open a book is to diverge into a new world. And it's just truly magical. Even it doesn't have to be a fantasy, in fact. It could just be a book in the real world itself. But Atlanta or Georgia or whatever. But it's amazing to see how indulged and into the book you are.
Yeah, and that's how I fell in love with books, because I can still remember my first favorite picture book was Ferdinand, and I don't know if you've ever read that, and I think they actually turned it into a cartoon movie, and it's just this bull who loves to smell the flowers. He doesn't want to do, the bull thing that they do with the I can't even think of the word, but it spoke to me because I always felt different. He wasn't doing what was expected of him. And even though obviously I'm not a bull, I've never, I'm not an animal, but we can relate to anything in nature. We all have, desires and dreams and want to connect. And yeah, just seeing someone that doesn't fit in, or everyone has an expectation on him and he follows his truth. He's like, no, I don't want to be mad and run and chase. I want to sit and just smell the flowers. And then my favorite book, I still have my copy, is Charlotte's Web. And that will forever just opens up my heart. It's it's real world, but it's also fantasy, because obviously you have talking pig and a spider, but it's all about the characters. Exactly what you said. It's a place to escape, but if you don't connect with the characters, at least for me, I just can't read it. There's got to be something, either something that you connect with, you see a bit of yourself. I don't think you'll ever find a book that's always going to represent you, because we're all made up of different things. We all grow up in different places, have different ethnic backgrounds, economic backgrounds, different dreams, but there's always something that we connect with another individual. There's always something, whether we both like spaghetti or the same show, or we love to dance, or we both grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, or we both whatever that is. So that's why I could connect with books like Ramona Quimby and all the Judy Blume books, but I had never seen a book with a character that had the racial background that I had, which is my mom's white German and my dad's a Black American. And I still don't think I've really ever seen that. I have seen a few biracial characters, but not one where it's just about everyday life and just being yourself.
I feel like what you raised is a really good point. Even I see that most of the books we read today may not really be targeted towards every single reader. They're more towards, I guess, towards either American white kids, or even like just kids who are American and not any other culture. And sometimes when you read that, it kind of gets like repetitive, right?
Yeah.
It's like the same thing over and over. A kid is going on an adventure, or a kid is acing in school, or doing something like that. But it's never like, wait a minute, what happened to the other characters? What happened to the other characters from India, or from Spain, or from Africa? What happened to those characters? They're people as well, right?
Exactly. Because even growing up, I grew up in a small, predominantly white town in Florida. But I did have friends that were Black. My best friend was Egyptian. I mean, she was born in Egypt and didn't even move to the States until I think she was about 9 or 10. And we didn't meet until I was in the 8th grade. And there was, even in our small town, it wasn't just white, cisgender kids. It still was a mix. And then you also have, you know, the skinny kids, the fat kids, the short kids, the tall kids, glasses. I had glasses, braces, whatever, you know, it's like different learning disabilities, I struggled with depression, and just, we all had different things. And it's so true, when you don't, after a while, you start realizing, if I don't see myself in a book, the part of me that's predominant at the time, you start to feel less than, or not humanized, or you don't feel like there's any possibility for your future. Because a lot of times with a lot of Black stories, it's always about the struggle. And instead, you know, we also love our families, and, you know, have fights with our siblings, and we have dreams and stuff we want to do too. And I don't always want to see a story that's just about the same thing over and over again. Exactly. So even when it's not even just, you know, the white American story, I feel like a lot of publishers tend to focus on just one stereotype of each diverse group and be like, well, okay, we did our job. We printed that one story. And it's like, no, we all want to slay the dragon, or we all want to fall in love, or we want to, you know, find the cure to whatever, you know, it's like, or go to outer space. We all want to experience different things, whether it's in real life or just in a book.
That's actually very well said. I think every reader or writer would have been thinking about that thing. Maybe some people actually, what happens, maybe they're scared as to what the feedback would be, and thus they're scared to try experimenting with different types of characters. Maybe they actually are thinking about doing something like this.
That's true. For me, even personally, it took me a long time to write a story from the point of view of someone like myself. I used to write from the point of view of a white female character because those are the stories I read. I didn't go to school for writing. I don't have an MFA, a master's in fine arts with writing. I actually, my first career was an accountant. So I didn't have like the schooling background, and because I was self-taught, I emulated the books that I loved. And the books that I loved were always white girls. So I didn't think they would publish it. I didn't think they would, you know, I didn't even consciously, it was kind of just this unconscious thing until someone pointed out, why aren't the main characters a little bit more like you? And I was like, I didn't realize I even was doing that. And part of me was like, I guess I didn't think I had permission. I don't know. Or I wasn't sure then, how do I write that story? How do you teach yourself first when there's nothing else to look at, to learn from? And then I sometimes struggle too, because it's when you are writing the secondary characters that you don't know their culture as intimately, or whatever aspect that you're trying to represent. And that's when you have other writer friends read your work and then give you feedback, and you try to find those people that are from either that culture, that background, whatever, so they can be like, no, that's stereotype, that's way off board, and do research. Like, even if you're writing fiction, you have to do your research.
Yep, that's definitely a good thing, because research, I think, is the main factor every person needs, even if it's fiction. Non-fiction, I mean, you totally need it, but like fiction, especially if you're writing a character who maybe you do not relate to. Maybe it's your first time writing something, like maybe you are an American writing on a Chinese character, but you are not Chinese yourself and don't know anyone. Then you could just search it up, make sure you're using a reliable source. Exactly. And then make sure what you're writing is actually true, because you don't want to hurt people without knowing it and then being into the trouble of actually hurting someone.
Exactly. Yep. And even with my debut novel, Myra is a scientist. She loves science. She wants to be an astrophysicist. She wants to be an astronaut. I don't know science at all. I was horrible at science back in middle school. I was interested in it because I grew up near Cape Canaveral, where NASA is, and I used to see all the time the space launches, the shuttle launches, and I never even realized that other people in the world didn't see it, that they didn't have the access that I did. And I remember there was a lot of movies back then. I kind of had that dream, oh, that'd be so cool to go to space, and what would that be like? But I never thought that someone like me could, because when I was that age, there was no Black woman, or actually any person of color at that time, that had gone to space. There was just Sally Ride was the first one when I was a kid. But yeah, I did not know science, and I didn't want, because the story is loosely based on real life between myself and my cat Whiskey, whose name was changed to Sir Fig Newton in the story. But I didn't want Myra to be exactly like me, so that's why I made her into a scientist. So I had to do a lot of research, which was actually, it ended up being a lot of fun, because there were so many things I'm like, oh my gosh, really? And had friends that had more of a scientific type mind read my stories, because they were like, no, she would not do that. And I realized, oh, I was interjecting my own personal decisions. So yeah, exactly what you were saying. You have to research even if it's fiction.
Anyways, to all the people out there, I would just like to point out, Sonja just said that it's good to try. She also tried. She didn't know whether she was gonna write a book with a different character than usual. So anyone out there who's thinking about writing a book like this with a character who is diverse and not like the typical character, please go ahead and try writing it. What happens later on is in the hands of the future. The future will decide what happens next, but just do the job of actually writing it and let the future decide what happens.
Exactly. And that's one thing too. I think that is even just the beginning, what you said, just write. It took me so long to just write. And I think we had spoke earlier before we went live. You are a writer if you write. I remember when I realized that I wanted to be a published author, because I always loved to write when I was a kid, but later in adulthood, when I was in my career, and I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot about how much I love to write, and I really want to be a published author. And I used to complain all the time, like, oh, I wish I was a writer. And her friend was like, well, just write. And it's like, oh yeah, you're right. So whatever you want to do, whether it's writing or dancing or photography or have a podcast or whatever, just do it. You're gonna fall down. Nothing is perfect the first time around, or maybe you're perfect the first time around, but then you keep doing it and you fall. But that's part of the fun of it. Don't worry, like you said, don't worry about the future. Just what can you do right now? And whether if writing is kind of scary, then just daydream. That's something that's how all my stories kind of start. I just daydream about the character or the world, or what feeling or experience do I want to play with. And as the more and more I daydream, the more excited I get. And then, it'll fuel you to start writing.
Okay, so my second question for you, or like second and last question for you, is what do you think makes a good writer, and also what are the challenges you have faced or you think you're going to be faced with in the future?
Well, kind of what we were just talking about what makes a good writer is just showing up. Just keep going. Don't let anybody, change your mind, tell you otherwise. There's so much either self-doubt. I know, especially with even a lot of my writer friends, there's constant doubt, and it doesn't matter where they are on their journey. When I started off, and most of my friends were just wanting to write, or we were starting to write, or now it's like I have some friends who have tons of books out there. Some of their books are being turned into movies. Some of them, New York Times bestsellers, have awards, and it's like all of us still have self-doubt when you sit down to that page, even whether it's completely empty or you're halfway through your story. And that's okay. The fear is never gonna completely go away, but that fear is also, remember, it's there because this is something that you enjoy, something you love, and it's exciting, and you want to do good, but just push through that fear and just keep writing, just keep showing up and celebrate. I think that's one thing a lot of writers don't do. They don't celebrate successes. And when I mean successes, I mean everything, because a lot of times it's those big dreams of getting the agent or publishing the book or being a New York Times bestseller. And it's a lot of that stuff, it's so far out, it's out of your control. You can't make those things happen. And I think if we would celebrate the things that you can control, which is sitting down and writing, reading books, talking to friends about books, talking about how do you write a story, or getting feedback when you're ready for that. And just those little things, every time you do something that gets you closer to your goal, or, which gets you closer to your dream, celebrate it. Be proud of yourself. Be like, I did it. So I think that's like one of the biggest things, because you'll keep showing up when you realize, yes, I do love this, and I'm getting better and better because I keep doing and trying and showing up. And you'll fuel that excitement. And because the only person that truly can believe in yourself and love your work is you. You can't control anybody else's feelings or reactions to you. So what you think about yourself and believe in yourself is what matters most.
That's actually really good, because I think one thing I've learned from every author who's come, including you, is the same thing, which is that you just need to keep writing. You need to focus on your craft, and like the success which is after that will follow you. I think there's a quote like that, I'm not sure really. I think there's a quote, if you work hard, success will follow you, something like that.
Oh, that does sound familiar, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there's a quote like this by some famous person, I'm not really sure. So anyways, he said that, and I feel like what you said kind of connects to this quote. If you put these two together, it feels like that's probably the main point, which is that you just need to keep writing, keep working hard, and then later on you get an agent you will get your book published. You'll be getting awards or whatever happens after writing.
Yep.
And I guess you just need to write first for any of that stuff to even happen. You need to just like write and then finish it.
Yes.
I have a lot of trouble finishing what I start. It's like getting tough in between. I just like sometimes either like stop or like just like not do it at all.
Yeah. And then
come back to it later on, but then
exactly.
It didn't happen.
Exactly. And sometimes those, there's no time wasted. Every word you put on the page is needed. Even if that story never does get finished, you needed that to get into the rhythm of writing, to find your voice, to figure out what story you really do want to tell. And yes, sometimes you go back and pull that book out, and it's just no judgment. It's like we judge ourselves too much or compare ourselves. Don't compare yourself to other writers, like people you look up to or other friends, because every journey is different. And just focus on your journey and have fun with your journey and celebrate each other's successes and lift each other up. So I think that is so important. In the middle grade community, everyone is just so supportive and cheers everybody on, and just having that community of friends.
That's amazing. Thank you for being here with us today. I had a great time talking to you, and I'm sure our audience and even me learned a lot about you, your books, and your writing process, and like everything about writing. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I had so much fun, and thanks again for all that you're doing and just spreading this knowledge and joy to others and inspiration. You are a huge inspiration.
Thank you so much. It means a lot to me. So anyways, this is the end of the episode, guys. I hope you all had a great time and learned a few new things. Anyway, stay tuned for new episodes every week. Thank you.